Friday, February 3rd, 2023. I'm Aaron Schatz, editor-in-chief of Football Outsiders, here with Mike Tanier. Normally we do Thursdays. Today we do Friday. The headline on the show says Mike's Reese's Senior Bowl highlights, not to be confused with Mike Reese's Senior Bowl highlights. Mike Reese is not here. But if you want a very Patriots-centric set of Senior Bowl highlights, I'm sure you could talk to him.
Absolutely. Good job, by the way, Ross. They get kind of squirrely if you don't put the sponsor in there.
Mike's got his Reese's Senior Bowl hat. So we'll do some early Super Bowl talk, I think. But mostly we're going to talk other stuff today. We're going to talk Senior Bowl. We're going to talk free agency. We're going to talk coaching decisions. And we're going to talk about rumors that Mike heard while he was in Mobile, talking to other reporters, seeing coaches, everything that goes on at the Senior Bowl. So the first question I want to ask you is, let's talk about the free agent quarterback market. Right. Sort of stoked a little bit by Derek Carr showing up at the Pro Bowl games and giving a hell of an answer to a question when one of the reporters asked him if it was a great performance, and he said something about it being the best performance he'd ever had in Las Vegas, and that's why they're getting rid of him. Let me ask about Jimmy Garoppolo first.
Right.
What was the talk about Jimmy G? Because obviously with Brady retiring, there's now one fewer quarterback in the free agency market, and Jimmy G's a big name out there. We know he's not going back to San Francisco.
Yeah, and so there's one more team that needs a quarterback, and if you start doing the math and stacking up the teams that need quarterbacks, there's a lot of them. And then when you look at the inventory of quarterbacks, okay, we'll talk about this later. There's none in Mobile. There's none at the Senior Bowl that's anything in terms of a prospect. So you got your Stroud, your Young, your Richardson. You will need a bridge quarterback if you get Richardson from Florida, and you've got your Levis, which I'm not going to talk about Levis right now. Then you look at who's actually available. Carr, we can probably talk about some more. I'm under the impression that we're going to see at least a franchise Daniel Jones, if not extended, a franchise, if not extended, Geno Smith, and a franchise Lamar Jackson. There's not enough inventory of quarterbacks to meet the demand right now in an extreme way. In the past, that's always been the case, but it's kind of extreme now. There's not even like this.
The entire NFC South essentially needs quarterbacks. Right now, I believe Andy Dalton would be a free agent. Mm-hmm. I believe everyone in Carolina would be a free agent, except for sorry, who's the kid they drafted last year?
Oh gosh,
Corral.
Yes, Corral.
Matt Corral.
Yes.
Desmond Ridder would be the starting quarterback in Atlanta, and Kyle Trask would be the starting quarterback in Tampa.
Yeah, and I could see Ridder possibly getting that job. I think you'd want a competitor for him at the very least. Kyle Trask is not the answer. The answer is not on the roster in Carolina. And Andy Dalton will get a bridge quarterbacking opportunity somewhere in this market. So you're left with Garoppolo, who the 49ers are making very clear they have zero interest in keeping. And he's sitting there. I think he's going to make bank somewhere because this is the guy, whether he's a bridge for some team like the Panthers, who's grabbing a Richardson, or some team says, like the Jets obviously would be the first team that pops to mind. This is our starter right now as we try to build a 49ers type factory around him. He's going to wind up being the winner in that free agent market.
Although the Jets make less sense now because of the change in coordinator. When it was Mike LaFleur and he had come out of San Francisco, that made a ton of sense. Now that it's Nathaniel Hackett, the Garoppolo, there's not a match there as far as they've worked together and we know he works in that scheme. Like that's gone now.
But there is a match now in Houston with DeMeco Ryans down there who's made a bunch of comments today or yesterday, I don't know when the press conference was, talking about wanting to build he almost said a 49ers type offense. He's saying things like, well, we want to be able to run play action. And if nothing's available downfield, check the ball down to an explosive playmaker. We know what you're saying. We know what you're saying, DeMeco. So he hasn't picked a coordinator yet, I don't think, but that would be a place that Garoppolo could land. And with Ryans being there, the Texans are no longer a circus. And it might be a good location.
We hope.
6
years. We hope. They're no longer a joke. They may still turn out to be a circus.
6-year contract for Ryans, so they're not into this one and done mentality. No more Easter Bunny down there. I think they're on the path towards returning to the NFL. Let's put it that way.
Was there talk about specific teams that would want Garoppolo, or just that he'll just be in demand?
It's just that he will be in demand at this point. I don't know. I didn't hear a whole lot of specific team stuff in that frame of reference. So
What about Derek Carr or some of these other free agent quarterbacks? It sounds like the talk is that it's going to be franchise tags for Jones and Jackson and Smith, but what about Derek Carr, who I guess he enforced a clause in his contract that he has a no trade clause if they wait till February 15th to trade him, which means
yes,
they're probably just cutting him.
they're probably just cutting him. So and that's the thing. Everyone says they're just going to wait this out, wait until he's cut, so you can negotiate directly with Carr and not put the Raiders in between, and you can get a better deal on Carr at that point. Not only do you not have to trade any draft picks or anything, but he's got to come to you without that final contract year in. And the main thing I kept hearing is we joke about like the Raiders having no money. The Raiders really have no money. The Raiders have no money. So every time they incur an expense, they've got another problem coming on the back end of that. So I know last week there was like, well, maybe Brady will go to the Raiders. There was never a chance Brady was going to go to the Raiders. There was no money for Brady. And immediately after Brady's retirement, I see Pro Football Talk. Oh, maybe they'll pivot to Aaron Rodgers. There's zero money for Aaron Rodgers.
Is there money for Garoppolo?
I don't know if there's money for Garoppolo at this point in Las Vegas. In Las Vegas, they're going to have to go for cheap solutions. They might be in the Baker Mayfield category. They might be in the Dalton category as they try to get some past expenses, the Gruden money, the Devontae Adams money that's in escrow right now, other losses from the past, get that to kind of come off the books before they can get on the books. I would be stunned if the Raiders make any kind of splashy move like that.
A reminder, by the way, for those, if you are watching us live on Twitch or YouTube, please make comments and ask questions. We love to talk to you during the show. So Brady retired. It was sort of an anticlimax. Like we blew our wad last year on Brady remembrances, and everybody this year just ran the exact same articles they ran last year, slightly updated.
Did you rerun something? Did we rerun something?
At ESPN Plus, we reran my 50 greatest Brady's games with one change. Yes.
I wondered how you got that out so fast.
Yeah, that article was from last year. The only thing that was different was game number 40.
Game number 40 was from this year?
Was from this year, yeah. Otherwise, it was the same article as last year, yeah.
That's brilliant because it popped up on my feed, and it's like, my God, you must have been working like around the clock to get it out that quick.
Well, we know it. I mean, I would have had to write that whole thing in an hour. I just wrote one. I wrote one little bit. I wrote like 3 sentences, and then I was like, "There we go. There's our change. There we go. Throw it up." Everybody threw up their stuff from last year, so I do think it's for real this time. In that, first of all, he was crying.
Yeah, like
he was emotional. Like it wasn't like, last year it was sort of like, I'm retiring. That's how it is. This year he was like, yeah, I'm not coming back. And the other is like, he would be a total joke if he came back at this point.
Right. There's a little bit of a pride element that comes in, but you're right. I was struck by the sincerity of it because most things coming out of Brady camp over the last few years haven't felt particularly sincere. They always felt very marketed and contrived to make sure his brand and his image were a certain way. And seeing him sort of alone sitting there talking almost like a breakup video or something like that felt very, very real. And it was heartening to see it. Somebody who has like a hard heart towards Brady like me to say, oh yeah, you are closing the book on 25 years of your life and like 25 years of our lives. And it is something emotional.
There's talk in New England that Robert Kraft wants to sign him to one of those one-day contracts, which I find the whole idea of those one-day contracts to be silly.
Yeah, I guess in this case, do we need to establish that Brady was with the Patriots? Like that's a
right. Well, it's the whole thing like Witten. Witten signed one with Dallas. Well, Witten spent his whole career with Dallas. Did he really need to do this one-day contract to prove that he was a Cowboy? Like, except for 1 year, he was in Dallas his whole career. So,
right.
Brady, it's the same thing, right? These one-day contracts are sort of silly, but if he wants to sign one, great. If he doesn't, I don't think it changes the way anybody around here feels about him.
No, back in the day, like some guy who played like 5 seasons and was like, your sturdy safety, 5 or 6 years, then went away for a year or two. and then they're retiring at age 29, and people have kind of forgotten about them, but kind of remember them. The one-day contract kind of brings them back into the local market's memory, so people can say farewell to him. And then if he wants to go back to the local market and open up, a Dodge dealership or something like that, there's like a memory there. That's not required at the Brady Witten superstar level to say you retired in a certain place.
And
you don't need to be brought back,
I'm assuming when the schedule comes out this year, there'll be a Sunday or a Monday night game that'll be obvious. That's the Brady number retirement game.
That'd be nice. That'll be the only time we see the Buccaneers in prime time, except for some.
Oh, I meant it for the Patriots. Do you think the Buccaneers would retire his number for only 3 years? I figure he's going into their Ring of Honor, but I don't think they'll retire his number.
You're right. They're not going to retire his number. Yeah, it'll be a Patriots game. You're right. Probably a Patriots-Bills game.
Yeah, he'll go in the Ring of Honor. He'll go in the Ring of Honor for Tampa, even though he only played 3 years there because he led them to a Super Bowl. But he won't get a number retirement. Is very rare in the NFL because there's so many players. They need those numbers.
Right.
It's really hard to set numbers aside.
Exactly right. You'll see some teams have like a retired number with 2 guys on it because
I don't know if the Patriots have retired numbers other than I think 73 for John Hanna. I think that might be the only one.
Some teams, and I lose track of it, and they might be one of them, like the equipment manager was sort of de facto in charge of it.
Yeah.
Like I never give that number out anymore again because of this guy, and they never really did it in that way. Now, the Patriots have a Ring of Honor, right?
But I think they don't do a Ring of Honor. They have a Patriots Hall of Fame. So they don't have the names like on a ring around the stadium, but there's a little building next door to the stadium that has like artifacts and stuff. And they give out red jackets instead of gold jackets, and they give one person every year. One of the big debates around here, actually, on talk radio is should Bill Parcells be in the Patriots Hall of Fame?
Yeah.
Because on one hand, he basically is responsible for the popularity of the team. Let's be perfectly honest, right? Like more than Brady, more than Belichick, more than Bledsoe, Parcells is responsible for the team being the number 1 team in this area. On the other hand, people are still angry about the way he left here.
I don't know what to say about that. He also led the team to a Super Bowl, right?
Yep.
He coached them to a Super Bowl. It seems like a perfectly reasonable thing to do because, yeah, you're right. In that era, there was talk of moving the team, talk of moving them to Connecticut, talk of moving them to, I think, to Arizona for
St.
a while.
Louis was a discussion.
St. Louis was in the discussion. I know Kraft was just working his way up to buying the team. There was like this long, weird.
Yeah, Kraft bought halfway through the Parcells. It was the Razor guy, I think, Victor Kayam, and then it was Ornstein, the guy from Budweiser, and then I think he sold to Kraft.
Right, and the guys in between, it got very wobbly in terms of like what the future of the team was.
Yeah.
But
we thought they were out of here, honestly. Like when I was growing up, if you ranked the 4 teams here, it was unbelievable. Red Sox were number 1. Celtics were clearly 2. Bruins are their own thing because the way hockey works is that there's only 75,000 hockey fans in any one city, and they all own season tickets.
Yep, and 10 jerseys. yeah.
And then the Patriots were a distant 4th.
Right, and the facilities stunk back in the day. I remember those teams going back. I know the Grogan era and like the Tony Eason era, they kind of bubbled up. But for the most part, it was just this kind of also ran organization.
Yeah, until Parcells showed up.
Well, for Brady, what they need to do is, what is that? US 1, the one road that leads to that damn stadium that you basically is giant parking lot.
They should name it Tom Brady Street or something.
And have a Brady Colossus like striding over it. So you have to go through Brady's legs to get to the stadium. And like, because the traffic is so slow, you can look up at Brady's stuff for like 20 minutes as you're walking.
All right. Let's talk about some of the coaching changes and what you think. Let's start with Sean Payton to the Broncos.
It's the thing that happened.
I honestly don't know enough about Sean Payton's personal scheme to be able to answer the question. I think it's a scouting question. Can he fix Russell Wilson? And I don't think I'm a good enough scout to have a good answer to that question myself.
And I think there's such a physical / emotional / mental / age issue to fixing Russell Wilson that I'm not sure. I would say that just grabbing your basic Mike Kafka and saying, hey, you go deal with this, was probably going to be doomed to failure. That Russell Wilson, if Wilson was tuning out Hackett, he's going to tune out a younger coach. there's a chance he won't be able to tune out Payton. I guess from a X and O standpoint, my first question is, Russell Wilson doesn't look like Drew Brees to me. I mean, they're both diminutive for quarterbacks.
Payton ran a different offense when Winston was his quarterback. He went deep a lot more often with Winston. I think Payton can certainly adapt his offense to a different style of quarterback. That doesn't worry me.
Right. So, but like, there's so many layers to this, and I think I wrote about it in the article. It's like, it's pretty clear that now there's an ownership faction, and there's factions within that factions, and we've heard some rumors, some of which I don't want to run with publicly, but some of the things people might think are happening are happening. There seems to be like a Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson's like a faction unto himself right now.
Are you suggesting that the Walton family needs to star in the sequel to Succession? Is that they may not all get along and agree about everything Broncos related?
My jokes about the Suicide Squad were not far off of reality. Let's put it that way. And now you've got, like, Payton comes in as his own sort of faction. So it's like a multiple online role-playing game with all these factions warring against each other. Now, maybe this turns into steel sharpening steel. It turns into something great. Or it could just be a Succession type soap opera that just keeps rolling on and on for the next couple of years.
I mean, I will say Kevin Cole did a good job, I think, of explaining the idea that Payton is worth the pick. Yeah. If you look at like how good Payton has been as a head coach over time, and how often his teams have played better than expectations, that it's worth a first round pick, a late first and a second, I guess, to have him, especially given that any research we've done about head coaches shows that the only thing that really suggests that it's predictive about how good they're going to be is how good they were in previous jobs. Like how good they were as coordinators doesn't really prove to be predictive, and how much you think they get along with players doesn't prove to be predictive.
Right.
Like nothing else proves to be predictive except how good were they as head coaches. And Sean Payton was very good as a head coach.
And you can look at McCarthy and people are like, oh my God, McCarthy, this, that. Cowboys are in the playoffs.
Yeah.
The Cowboys had one 2020 year where it all went kablooey, so that's fine. They've been in the playoffs 2 straight years. The team is functioning properly and doing the things it has to do. So that's an example of bringing in the coach who, he was just, the quarterback made him, or maybe not. That's not necessarily the case. So it's an optical thing too with Payton. And like I said, there's who's going to fix Russell Wilson. This is, again, a team that can't afford another Nathaniel Hackett coming in and saying, I don't know how timeouts work. I don't know. I don't know how to manage a team late in the game. You can't afford to do that. It's worth a first round pick to say, we know none of that nonsense is going to happen. And also look at their roster. It's still a pretty strong roster overall when they get some of these guys back from injuries.
Right. I mean, I think between Payton and regression to the mean, you have to expect that Russell Wilson is going to be better next year. And then when you look at the rest of that roster, like that team should definitely be better next year.
Yeah. The only thing is, and when I wrote about earlier in the week, I made the comparison to the Washington football team with Mike Shanahan and Donovan McNabb. And it turned out that McNabb really was at the end of the line. It was on a very quick, rapid downhill. There's a possibility that's the case for Wilson. I'm kind of wait and see on that because it didn't look that way at the end of the Fosberg era. At the end of the season, he looked like he was more like his old self. So let's wait and see. But there is a chance of that.
I pointed out on Twitter, by the way, the flip of some of that research that Kevin Cole mentioned, which was done by Andrew Healy, who used to write for us.
Oh, yeah.
Is that we have no clue. We have no clue how good a head coach DeMeco Ryans is going to be with Houston. We want to believe that the circus is over. We want to believe that this guy, we know he's coordinated a great defense for a couple of years.
Right.
We know that he is very well respected by players. There's no indication that either of those things are predictive for success in head coaching.
Very true. And when I say the circus is over, I mean the circus. Right. Where it's one coach every year and, maybe we'll go just promote Josh McCown from backup quarterback to coach. That's a thing we can do. And, Davis Mills is our quarterback. We're not going to try and do anything.
At least there should be some stability now in the coaching staff. Yes.
Right. He can bring stability and professionalism, and that's already a step up for this team. Now, the next step after that, that's the thing we don't know anything about. It could still be 6-win, 7-win team for a couple of years and then see you later. All those things are possible. I'm just much more sanguine about him than I have been about a lot of these other coaching hires in the past. I'm talking about also like the Matt Rule type hires where
this is a good professional coaching hire. This is
yes.
This is absolutely the kind of guy you expect to get a head coaching job. You respect that he gets a head coaching job. I'm just saying he could be a very good head coach.
Yes.
And he could be a terrible head coach.
Right.
And we honestly don't know. It could be anything in between.
He could be anything in between. And we don't know much about Nick. I always say his name wrong. Nick Caserio?
Caserio, yeah.
Nick Caserio. We don't really know what he is like completely unshackled either from Belichick protecting any mistakes below you or Easterby magnifying any mistakes you make by making another set of them on top of that. He strikes me as a GM who is good at low-level free agent hires and is okay at draft stuff. And that's a good combination if you're working in tandem with a head coach that is a good head coach and you don't have Looney Tunes around you. And I want to see if both of these guys can take that step up now.
Was there any other scuttlebutt in Mobile about any specific of the openings, of the coach openings right now?
There's a lot of WTF are the Colts doing right now. Like, no one understands what's going on with that search. The Cardinals, we kind of understand what's going on there. They had a sort of a sudden change at general manager, and they're taking their time bringing people in, and it's not necessarily a super, what would you say? Not a very enticing job at this point. Indianapolis is different because they've known for weeks and months that they needed a head coach. They did not go into the Payton sweepstakes in any meaningful way, which the Cardinals did, and that probably slowed some teams' operations down a little bit. And I just kind of read this coming across the Indy Star. They might be doing third interviews with a lot of
which is unusual.
Which is very unusual. I think somebody, the Indy Star writer said, 4 decades there have not been third interviews for head coaches. And no one really has a prediction or understanding what's going on there. What at the very top, Ballard and Irsay, what they are really thinking about. I mean, one thing is pretty clear is that both of them are thinking about the McDaniels situation from 6 years ago.
Not having that happen again, yeah.
Right. But if you look at their list, it's all over creation. You can't tell what they want. I mean, I don't know why you have to interview Jeff Saturday twice.
Right. You already knew enough about him to hire him as your interim coach.
Yeah. But now you have
to learning.
Right. So I feel like it's going to be an expect the unexpected type of situation there. And is this all just a smokescreen because Irsay wants Saturday? I mean, that's one of the possibilities. And it's all complete guesswork at this point.
But he's the owner. Hire who you want, man. You run the team.
Yeah. Hire St. Bernard, that kind of thing. I don't
know. All right. More about the Senior Bowl and your trip to Mobile. What you wrote a lot. We put it up yesterday afternoon, I think. What the big winner positions, like the positions that came out of the Senior Bowl looking like these are deep positions in this year's draft.
Well, as I wrote and kind of led with it, running back was outstanding. And that's rare at the Senior Bowl. And even Nagy said so. It's usually we've got a bunch of seniors and all the good running backs are juniors and they're coming out and we're kind of dealing from the second hand of the deck here. And this year, lots and lots of explosive guys. And the 2 guys I talked about in the article mainly were Evan Hull out of Northwestern. And this is a kid, if you go back and watch some Northwestern footage, or if you saw him play, he's a rusher and receiver. I think he had 53 receptions last year. He's good on the wheel route. He's good underneath. He makes guys miss in the open field. And he's got a jump cut. He's got this sensational jump cut that looks great on tape, great on film. And then when we saw it live, it looked great live. And he was fast, quick, all of those things. The other one who probably was the best back there for the entire course of the trip was Tulane's Tyjae Spears. And this guy just runs away from people. Those of you who follow the Senior Bowl or follow on Twitter a lot of different guys, you'll see video after video of him just weaving through guys and running away from them on the practice field. And that's not to discount, by the way, Georgia's Kenny McIntosh, who was hurt the first day. So we didn't get to see a lot of him. I didn't get a chance to interview him or anything like that. But this is a guy who was, he's a Georgia running back. He was behind Cook. He's been there forever. He was behind, I think he was behind Swift for a while. He was behind the other running back that the Raiders drafted.
Zamir White.
Kazir White. And then last year he kind of burst in the forefront. I thought he looked good, not great on film. When he finally got out there and was healthy the second day, the receiving ability, the swiftness, etc.
This is emblematic of the whole problem with running backs, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
Right? The whole problem with running back is that there are too many of them
that
are good.
Right.
It's not the whole running backs don't matter idea, right? Which is exaggerated, but the basic idea is not that there aren't any good running backs. It's that there are way too many good running backs. Why would you? It's like, why would you draft Bijan Robinson and then wait till the 5th to draft a corner? Mm-hmm. If you could draft a corner in the 1st round and then get Tyjae Spears in the 5th.
That's exactly it. And maybe you want Bijan. Oh, by the way, Bijan's backup. Make sure I get my names right here. Rashawn Johnson looked very good. So the backup at Texas looks like somebody who can play at the NFL. Even if you want Robinson, say, well, I think I can get Robinson in the 2nd round. Why would you take Josh Jacobs? Why would you pay Saquon? When all of these,
why would you pay? Right? Why would you pay any of the free agent running backs when there's this many good young running backs available in the draft? And that's not even including the juniors. That's just the seniors.
Yes, yeah, and that's it. And there were so many of them there. Appalachian State's Cameron Peebles had a really good game. I'm just making sure set of practice. I'm trying to get some of these names right. The kids from Illinois looked very good. Josh something or another. I'm sorry that I get mixed up on this so easily. The kid from Illinois looked really good. Eric Gray from Oklahoma, he had some trouble in pass protection, but he looked really quick. So many of these guys. And you reference cornerbacks, and you say wanting to get a cornerback in the 1st round. That was the other big winner this week, is the cornerback crop that was down there. We were a little bit disappointed because the other kid from Illinois, Witherspoon, he dropped out. He's somebody who has a middle of the 1st round grade. And he yeeted. He's like, I'm not going to prove anything down there. So many good cornerbacks. I'll give one example here. Rajon from Oregon State, Rajon Wright. He's not on my winners and losers list. He looked really good down there. It'll come to me in a second. Caillou Blue Kelly from Stanford.
That's an interesting name. Caillou Blue Kelly.
Right. I'm not going to comment on it. It's KYU, by the way. He has not the same first name as that little monster from PBS Kids. It's a different Caillou. Okay. So it's not him all grown up, but he's ornery like that in that he's very physical in coverage. He had a couple interceptions. Some of these cornerbacks, the only reason why they're not moving into the 1st round is because when you look at the list of 1st round cornerbacks that are out there who are juniors, underclassmen, that's cherry. And this is going to be a great year for a team that wants to stock up in the secondary.
Who were your biggest winners of the week? I have a list here. We have your biggest winners of the week list.
Yes, I made sure to write them down here. And I'm glad we got our Purdue fan club commenting right now. Payne Durham, tight end, was one of the big ones. And this is a guy I think everyone knew he could block, but he can block. He can really block. And the other thing is he's natural 6'5". It's not like a media guide 6'5". It's for real. He's got the long arms. He can catch the ball away from his body. Most of the time when I was watching him on tape, on film, or on Saturdays, he was catching a little RPO pass into the flat. Hello, Todd. Yes. Athletic Director of Purdue University, Todd Singer, is here. Excited to hear this piece of information. A lot of times when I saw him, it was a little RPO pass in the flat. He can do a lot more than that. And this is a guy you're going to put him in line like a real tight end, and he's going to block 1st down, 2nd down, and then you can have him from the 3-point stance going up the seam, running deep occasionally, and you're not going to tip your tendency. That's one of my winners. Who else do I have here? Oh, Tyjae Spears, just talked about him, so we don't have to go back to that. Just really, really good all-purpose back. The third one I was just mentioning, cornerbacks. Kid I got to talk to a little bit. Kid I did a little more film study of afterwards. When I ran back, when I was in the airport, I looked at him. Was Julius Brents, cornerback, Kansas State. He's 6'3". He's got 87,000 million-inch arms. I think it's 34 3/4. Don't hold me to that, but it's a really long arms. He had an interception on Tuesday. He had a pass breakup, and he talked about how he had to cover Quentin Johnson, the top wide receiver out TCU, a lot. Went back and watched some of those games, and it was very eventful. He got beat by Johnson once or twice, but he's on an island against a first-round pick in the Big 12 where it's all just bomb, 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 bomb. But so he gives up a big player to has interception, has a forced fumble, has a bunch of pass breakups. And this is a guy, if you're looking for that taller matchup receiver, Brent's is somebody I think is moving into, I would say, the early day two conversation.
The losers of the week were the quarterbacks. You made that pretty clear in your article.
Yeah, it's hard because I don't want to like rip guys, but one of the things we were joking about is how often in the 7-on-7 it was a quarterback, and whether it was Hall from BYU or the young man from Fresno State, Hainer, and they're just standing there in 7-on-7s, like waiting for someone to get open and like rolling out in 7-on-7s. Now, part of that's the coverage against the receivers, certainly, but then when the ball left these guys' hands, it was not good. There were a lot of deflected passes. There were a lot of floaters, a lot of errant passes behind guys. I waited until the second day because it's very common on the first day. No one has any synchronicity with each other yet because they're all new to each other. And it was still that case. I was hoping Max Duggan would impress a little bit, especially since Duggan had some of his receivers down there. And he looks like just a guy at best. Hall struggled. We didn't see a lot of the guy from Louisville, Cunningham, because he was hurt the first day, and then it was like a catch-up day the second day. And just one thing, on top of everything else, look at their measurables. And you didn't even have guys coming in who like, oh, well, at least he's 6'3", 220, and it looks like he's well built for the position. And so you can kind of take a mediocre scouting report and say, well, he's draftable because of X, Y, Z. A lot of guys coming in like 6 foot and 1/8 of an inch and like 202 pounds and not looking particularly strong out there. So again, it was a big week for Garoppolo, big week for Daniel Jones.
It sounds like there are not going to be quarterbacks taken on day two. Like those 4 guys are going in the first round and then nobody.
Tennessee, the injured Tennessee guy.
Hooker, I guess. Yeah.
Hooker could go on day 2. That's about it. If anybody who I think has helium in them of the big 4 drops, they could go in day 2. But that's it. None of these other guys. A lot of these guys is going to be 6th, 7th round, and it might not be these guys. It might be someone who's out there in the weeds who did not participate in this game.
Unanswered questions from the Senior Bowl. 1, what is Andre Carter's upside?
This is interesting, though, folks. Andre Carter is the defensive end edge rusher out of Army. Okay, and we were all looking forward to seeing him. He did come. He did show up. And it wasn't superlative. He was getting beaten a lot by the offensive linemen, higher level competition than you face at Army, the offensive linemen who were there. And we were kind of hoping that he would come and be a rock star. Word on the street as we were, making the rounds, talking to each other, talking to people who talk to people. Carter's at West Point. He's still at West Point. He's still waiting for the official deferment to come through the government channels to come down to him. So while some of these guys are already at like the performance academies in Florida and already starting to work out to an NFL level and start to work out for the draft, he's still down there, doing whatever you do in the Army. I talked to him a little bit, and he's firing artillery off, and he's working on his business administration degree, and he's, running around with a rifle in his arm, which keeps you in very good shape, but not necessarily NFL combine preparation shape. So I don't think was really in a position coming in here to say, I was ready to go up against these guys in this situation and excel. 6'6", 240 some pounds. It looks like he'll get up to 265 or so, and has on film the traits to be a dominant guy. It's just he didn't see it yet. I still think that there's probably a first round pick in there somewhere, but we're going to have to wait and see if we see that guy at the combine.
Second, is Tank Dell big enough? His name is Tank.
Yeah, I think his name is Nathaniel. His nickname is Tank, but he is not Tank Lawrence. I got the exact height and weight here. 5'8" and 3/8 inches, 163 pounds. 163 pounds.
Wait, there's a guy named Tank Dell who's 163 pounds?
There's a young man named Tank who is 163 pounds, whose calves look like my arms, okay? Now, this young man can play, okay? Because I'm making fun of his weight and everything. He's a thin, lean little guy named Tank. He can play. He's a slot guy. He's like every slot guy you would imagine, just vaporizing guys in the open field, just winning. Now, there's a caveat there. It's like one-on-one drills, and you're the slot guy, and you have all this field around you. You you can do like 20 moves because you have all the space that are in the world, and you can vaporize your defender a lot. He still was doing a great job on that, was getting downfield against guys. Really looks good at tape on Houston. His Houston tape really looks strong. And I wanted to make him a second round pick. I really wanted to make this guy's going to be a second round pick. But at 163, and also I believe he's fifth year. He's very least a senior, but I believe he's a fifth year senior. There's these other question marks here. So absolutely fun to watch guy. And I'm definitely rooting for him. Got a chance to talk to his coaches and everything while we were down there. But 163 is a hard number to underestimate in terms of whether that's a problem for the NFL.
Yeah, that's small. I think that's smaller than Tutu Atwell.
That is Tutu-ish. Yes, Tutu and Tank combined, are like one defensive tackle, and that's a bad size. Michigan State's Jaden Reed, by the way, was another slot who's a more normal sized 5'10", 199 pound, whatever he is, 5'10". I can't find it right now. Normal size slot. If you're worried about weight, you could get him in the third round and give you that kind of nifty, shifty production.
The other question I want to ask about is DeJuan Jones, Ohio State right tackle. Is he worth a first-round pick?
That's what he looked like on day one. Now, by the way, DeJuan Jones, 6'8" and 1/8 of an inch, 375 pounds.
So he's 2 Tank Dells plus a lot of sandwiches.
He's 2 Tank Dells, yes, plus a whole scouting department's worth of saucy Q to go orders, all mixed into one dude. And he does not look fat at the weight. He looks large at the weight, and he is massive. I took some pictures. Everybody took pictures. Him standing next to a guard who is a normal sized third, fourth round NFL guard, coming in, and he looks like a half a head taller than him. And he was dominant, absolutely dominant on Tuesday. And he was going up against Carter. He was going against Isaiah Foskey from Notre Dame, who I think a lot of people have a day 2 grade on, and looks like a very good overall player. And he showed quickness. He showed a finish. He showed a mean streak. And I was excited this guy won. He then pulled out with an undisclosed injury. I haven't seen what it was. He didn't do interviews, which was frustrating because I think we all wanted to talk to him. And he kind of disappeared. I don't think he's participating in the game. So this is a guy who I think definitely helped his stock. He's the right tackle. He's the second best line prospect at Ohio State. But when you look at that level of athleticism mixed in with the sheer size, you start asking, is this a Lane Johnson? Is this a guy who can be that kind of impact guy on the right side? I'm going to go back and look at more tape, more film, but he might be. He looked that good.
Yeah. So it sounds like it was a good time overall. We were talking a little bit before we came on about sort of changes in the Senior Bowl. It has to go up a little bit against the Shrine Bowl now because the Shrine Bowl is now in Vegas at the same time as the Pro Bowl game. So that's getting some attraction from people. I mean, I know Derek went to the Shrine Bowl rather than the Senior Bowl, but that's because it's a drive for him instead of having to get on an airplane.
Yes. And there wasn't, we all know Boston College's Tay Flowers was the big name at the Shrine Bowl. There's not a lot of big name talent. And Mel Kiper said this was a weak draft class, and I agree. I think this is a weak draft class. Normally, I think Field Yates put it up on ESPN earlier. There's 6 first-round picks taken from a typical Senior Bowl. I don't know. There might be 3 or 4 this year. I'm not exactly even sure who they would be at this point. Maybe DeWand is one of them. But I guess the difference is the access is a little bit different. And I was talking to you a little bit beforehand. I can remember walking around Lad People stadiums and, sitting down, and across the way was Howie Roseman and Doug Peterson and Jim Schwartz, and they're eating their takeout and they're chit-chatting, and they're 40 feet away, almost within hearing distance of their conversation. Turning the corner, rest in peace, Ted Thompson would just be given an impromptu, I got 10 reporters here. I'm just going to do a little press conference here. And you would just walk around and do stuff. A lot of that stuff is gone. The NFL guys are on their side. Media is on their side. You can mingle if you know somebody and chit-chat on their way in and out. You can mingle at Veets later in the night. You can mingle at the haberdashery later in the night and certainly get some nuggets along the way. But that super casual, hey, I'm just sitting here talking to, the assistant GM, or I'm talking to the guy who just talked to the assistant GM. A lot of that is a little more buttoned down than it was a few years ago.
All right. Before we go, we want to remind everybody who's listening or watching about the Football Outsiders Reader Awards. This is our 20th annual Reader Awards. Doing all of the regular awards plus all of our special awards, like who you think should have made the Pro Bowl and didn't, plus the Keith Chopin Wood Award for the worst player in the league, and the best and worst commercials. So I wanted to give you a little bit of a preview of the early voting on best and worst commercials from football games this year. The current leader for best commercial is the Andy Reid mustaches ad from State Farm.
Really?
Yes. Followed by the Progressive Challenge flag ads.
Oh, I like those.
Popular. And then this one surprised me. It came in. So right now it's number 3. Burger King's Whopper.
Yes.
I expected that one to win worst commercial.
There's a chance it wins both.
There is a chance it wins both.
There is a chance it wins both. I think the question might come down to what's legal in your state.
Oh.
Because it has 2 different impacts based on your level of impairment on whatever substance you're impaired on.
Yeah.
Because it's a clarion call. It is a clarion call in some circumstances, and in other circumstances, it's like, my God, you're just stop trying to solve a Whopper. What about this commercial?
There's a very surprising early leader. I was surprised. The early leader for worst commercial is DirecTV's Football Housewives.
Really?
Yeah.
I find that innocuous. The one with Dak getting sacked?
The one with Dak getting sacked by the Housewives, by the Desperate Housewives.
I find that totally innocuous.
Number 2 is the Verizon Einstein ad with Paul Giamatti.
I don't even know that one.
That one is a recent one. That one's just in the last 3 or 4 weeks, but it has played non-stop, and people are really sick of it.
Wow. You know what? That's probably it. During the playoffs, a lot of times as soon as there's a commercial, I'm jotting notes down. So
yeah.
I had to have seen it like in December when I'm like watching multiple games at once. I know nothing about that. Come on, folks. There is not. I lobbied on our email chain and everything. Danny DeVito putting on a damn goggles and pouring olive oil all over a sandwich in a way that no human in Jersey, Philly has ever done makes me. It's the opposite of Whopper. It's like this disgusting image that makes me want to. I haven't eaten an Italian hoagie, Aaron, since that commercial started running. Because I think about, man, I'd love to go to Carmen's right now and get an Italian hoagie. And then I think about Danny DeVito. I got to pour on the juice. And I want to go have a salad. And I want to go jogging instead.
That is not currently number 3 in the worst commercial voting. Currently number 3 in the worst commercial voting is Burger King's Whopper. It's currently number 3 for both best commercial and worst commercial.
I guess that means an effective advertising campaign because it's the
yes. I haven't gone to Burger King since that ad campaign was on, but I've thought about Burger King a lot. I haven't actually bought anything from them, but I've thought about them a lot.
And you're based in Massachusetts. Okay.
Yes, we know what's legal here. Sports gambling, by the way, is now legal in Massachusetts as of last week.
Have you started downloading apps and stuff?
Apps will not be available for another month. Right now, you have to go to the Encore Sportsbook in Boston in order to bet. But apps will be available in like a month or a month and a half.
Who Payola back-channeled making sure that there was one place to gamble?
Steve Wynn. Steve Wynn Payola back-channeled that, yes.
Yes, Steve Wynn and the Corleone family made sure that for the Super Bowl, you could only go to one place, and then they could open up. You're going to be in time for March Madness, by the way, and have fun because you probably will not be able to put your credit card number in.
There literally is no sports event I know less about than March Madness.
You don't have to know anything about it. Just like, $10 on this team, $10, and you just sit there and like your Thursday and Friday afternoon melt away, and it's delightful.
All right. Okay, that does it for this show. I want to thank everybody who has been watching. Thank you to everybody listening to us as a podcast. As always, rate the podcast. Tell your friends about the podcast. We'll be here all through the off season, obviously, with weekly podcasts. We don't know yet when we're on next week.
I was going to ask if we figured that out yet.
I think what we basically need to do is show up at the media center and figure out if there's a place that we can do this from the media center, or do we have to go back to our hotel room to do this? And so once we figure that out, we should have a better idea of whether we're going to be able to do shows and when we'll be able to do shows.
Yeah,
but my guess is that we're going to be doing Tuesday and Thursday. That is my guess.
Okay. That makes sense. Thursday's good. Tuesday, we'll make sure we make it good.
And then we'll figure out the starting of the regular draft podcasts and the regular news podcasts and all the stuff we do in the offseason. Very exciting.
Oh,
all right. Yes, stop singing. Go get yourself lunch. Reese's our sponsors the Senior Bowl. That's our sponsor. All right. That does it for the show. Thanks, everybody. Have a great weekend. We will talk to you sometime next week. Watch the Twitter feed for an announcement of when the shows will actually be. But my guess is Tuesday at some point and then Thursday at some point. I don't know what time yet because Mike and I will both be on Mountain Time. But we'll figure it out.
We'll be here. You'll see us. Follow us on Twitter. Become an FO Plus subscriber. Enjoy the Super Bowl.
Have a good weekend, all.